Hello guys, this is this is a cue for a trigger warning. We are reacting to the Uvalde school shooting. This is a trigger warning. You are very susceptible to being enraged to have hurt people from this video. Please click off the video. The reason why I am uploading this is because this is from a stream and I want to stream my first interaction with all this. It was really like I knew that the police were that incompetent, but I didn't see exactly what the fuck transpired. So shout out to the dude that made the video. This is a hard video to either upload to even post. Rest in peace to all the people that he took away. Rest in peace, like the people that even died after it. All the children. 2 teachers. A husband of one of the teachers passed away. This shows you how much we failed as a country to save the children. People don't care about kids for real. I love you guys. This is an informational video. I'm saying you're gonna see me cry for sure. You're gonna see me frustrated. You're gonna hear me yell because of how damaging the impact was. This was one day after my birthday too, and it has nothing to do with me. But it was like, dang, I got like that shit is really fucking insane, bro. Other than that, I'm out. Send love to the family. Prayers to the family as well. Still. Their children would literally be in middle school by now, and they miss out on it because a retard took away their life. Fuck that nigga mama too.
School shootings are, unfortunately, not as rare as they should be. However,
No,
most of the time they are committed by a student at the school who is shooting at kids relatively their own age. There's something even more sinister about a grown adult coming back to school just to assault young children. This has happened on a few occasions, most notably with Sandy Hook and the Nashville shooting. This crime isn't mentioned too much in the grand scheme of things, but as you'll come to see, it is definitely one of the worst there's ever been. Salvador Rolando Ramos was born on May 16, 2004 in Fargo, North Dakota. He was the second child to his mom, Adriana Martinez, and his dad, Salvador Ramos Sr. His parents weren't together for too long before they ended up splitting up. This led to his mom, a native of Uvalde, Texas, taking the 2 kids back home with her not too long after he was born. Uvalde isn't the biggest city out there. In fact, it only boasts a population of about 15,000 people. It's in the United States, but it's only about 50 miles from the Mexican border and has an almost 80% Hispanic population. Salvador's mom herself seemed to prefer speaking Spanish in general and likely wanted to return to this sort of environment from society aside from his social media obsession. Sal continued to harass a lot of different girls online. He often made a lot of them extremely uncomfortable, usually making some sort of advance before immediately resorting to making rape threats or telling them they were going to die in one way or another. In one leaked conversation, he's seen saying hey to a random girl before telling her he would worship her. When she didn't respond immediately, he told her to jump off a bridge.
What the fuck?
As his fascination with Instagram grew, so did his interest in other social media platforms as well. He became very active on TikTok, YouTube, and for some reason a French live streaming app called Yubo. He tried to network with other people his age on Snapchat and started playing video games online as well. He was especially into Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and Fortnite. Most of his online accounts were notably very edgy. Almost all of his usernames referenced a desire for revenge or the idea of conflict in one way or another. Some of his usernames and addresses were revenge@gmail.com, revengevan@gmail.com, I'ma kill you 6, revenge, Sal Revenge, Salvador Fights, Disrupts, and The Biggest Op.
Hey, we're just jumping to where this fucker does what he does.
Even he couldn't seem to understand why they weren't coming in to get the kids.
What?
Zondo was growing annoyed as well. Shortly before, an award ceremony was being held at Robb Elementary School. It was one of the last days of school before summer vacation, and many students were set to graduate.
Killed 20 kids, bro.
Some students chose to go home after the ceremony, but many others decided to stay behind and watch movies in their classrooms with their friends. Salvador took his grandma's keys and made his way outside. He threw all of his gear into her Ford F-150 before sliding into the driver's seat himself. He then turned the key and set off on the short journey to Robb Elementary. Little did he know his grandma was still alive. Although she was severely injured, with the bullet tearing through the left side of her face, it hadn't gone through her brain at all. She managed to slowly begin stumbling from the home in order to get help from the neighbors. Despite not having a driver's license, Salvador did his best to drive out to the school himself. He did not do well. Driving toward Robb Elementary on South Grove Street, he lost control of the truck completely and went crashing through a barricade and straight into a large ditch a short distance away from the school. At least one of the wheels on the truck was completely ruined, meaning that it was no longer going to be of any use. So he decided to set off on foot. With what had happened with his grandma, Salvador was late in his plans. When he crashed the truck, it was now 11:28. Salvador hopped out of the truck and into the ditch. He was wearing all black clothing with his tactical vest over that, carrying ammunition inside. He was carrying one of his rifles, the DDM-4V7, and 7 magazines of ammunition. He decided to leave the other gun in the crashed truck. 2 men at a funeral home across from the school noticed the crash and made their way outside to make sure the driver was okay. They got fairly close to the truck, standing above the ditch and looking down at him from the road. At that time, Salvador was getting his gear ready. He popped into view from inside the ditch and began to fire at the 2 of them. Luckily, neither of them were hit. They turned around and began to run back toward the funeral home. Immediately, someone inside called 911 and reported the shooting. In addition, the police started receiving a volley of calls related to the crashed pickup truck in the ditch as people drove by. A coach at Robb Elementary, Yvette Silva, was outside with some of her 3rd graders when she noticed a backpack come soaring over the fence and onto the grass inside the school grounds. It was then that she saw a young man dressed in black climbing over it. The next thing she saw was the barrel of his gun rising up to shoot her. She ran from that field and towards her classroom. She grabbed the school radio and shouted, "Coach Silva to office. Somebody just jumped over the fence and he's shooting." Coach Silva then ran out to the 3rd graders outside and ordered them into lockdown. While she expected to hear a lockdown notification, she heard no such thing for quite a while. While the principal had tried to issue an announcement, she was having trouble with the Wi-Fi. Salvador was then seen making his way over to the 4th grade teacher's parking lot, firing his gun periodically. This was when a teacher outside of the school made the first 911 call, urging the local police to come out to the scene. This teacher then ran into the school through its west entrance and shut it behind her. This door would remain unlocked as, for whatever reason, it was only possible to lock from the outside with a key. Salvador began to fire toward the school from outside, shattering some classroom windows. A janitor was notified to start locking all of the doors of the school, but he grew scared from the gunfire partway through and hid in the cafeteria. At around the same time, a Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District, or UCISD, officer, Sergeant Coronado, first arrived on scene, having heard the last 911 call himself. There he saw 2 Uvalde police officers who had already arrived on scene. Sergeant Coronado asked them where the shooting was taking place. They said that they didn't know. Salvador, meanwhile, continued to fire. Given the sound of the gunshots were echoing outdoors, the police thought that they were actually being shot at. They then noticed a group of children in the playground, running away from the school. That was when one of the officers saw Salvador, making quick pace toward the school. He had a clean shot and raised his rifle, asking permission from Sergeant Coronado to shoot. Sergeant Coronado would never give him that permission. If he had
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That. Bro. Alright. Here. This is my problem. This is my genuine problem. And I don't think this is every police officer out there. But when it comes down to this shit, and there's a school shooting going on, and there are kids that are possibly getting hurt, regardless of what age they are, fuck just being kids. Humans, innocent people, from what we know, are being attacked by one threat. Your officer, yours, have a clear shot of killing this man, stopping him from doing whatever he's doing, and you don't give him clarification. You don't say shoot him. Some people should have leadership, others should not. I don't give a fuck what's going on. This is one of the biggest situations that you'll ever deal with. And if you sit there and you freeze up within it, you should not be the head of the conversation or of that group.
given the permission to shoot this clearly armed gunman shooting at young children, they would have saved many lives that day. Unfortunately, Salvador continued to the school uninterrupted. This would be the first of many, many mistakes that fateful day. Immediately after, a school resource officer came driving toward the school at a high speed. He saw a teacher outside, immediately mistaking him for the shooter. He drove right past Salvador, who was in clear sight, and began chasing the teacher down in his car instead.
That one is more understandable because you're just seeing somebody run away and you're like, oh shit. So you assume that it's them, but it's not the right person.
It was now 11:33. Only a few short minutes had passed.
Oh, Pete.
This was when a 4th grade teacher in room 102 heard the gunshots, thinking it was the sound of metal hitting brick. In a way, it was. She looked outside and saw Salvador with his gun and bag walking up the sidewalk to one of the entrances. She ordered her students to get down and hid behind a curtain herself. Salvador then made his way up to the west entrance, the same door that the teacher had just ran into previously. Given that the door was unlocked, he was able to enter the school completely unimpeded. As Salvador entered, he was seen on the school security camera raising his head and looking around with a maniacal grin. He shouted something along the way, which is thought to have been, "Little kids, time to wake up." At the same time, he was blaring music from either a speaker or his phone all the way. He walked a short distance forward and turned to the right. He already had his target area in mind, the connected classrooms that made up 111 and 112, the same place where he had been bullied himself in the 4th grade. He wasted no time walking straight to that room without giving any attention at all to any other potential target. While walking, he taunted, "Ready or not, here I come." As he made his way toward that room, a child came down the hall and looked around the corner to see what was happening. That was when Salvador pulled up his rifle and aimed it toward the window on the door to room 112. The 2 teachers inside had received an email about an active shooter in the school. One of them, Irma Garcia, got up to look out the door to see what was happening. It was at that very moment that she saw Salvador. As she blocked the door with her body, he immediately began to fire through the door multiple times, hitting Irma in the side and at least one student. He fired off several shots, causing students inside to scream out in terror. As the shots rang out, the teacher in the connected room, Arnulfo Reyes, heard what was happening. He said, "All of a sudden, we hear the first shots. Boom, boom, boom." In the confusion, none of them knew what the sounds were. No announcement had been made for the school to go into lockdown, and unless you were lucky enough to have been one of the people to get an email and read it instantly, most people were unaware that a shooting was even taking place. As the sound of gunshots continued, students began to ask what was going on. Mr. Reyes thought it might be a drill until he saw sheetrock come flying through the wall and into his classroom as a bullet shot through. He told the students to get underneath a long table that was placed against a wall. He asked them all to hide underneath and pretend like they're sleeping. He didn't want them to see what might happen next. He began to make his way over to his own position that he had learned from previous drills in the school, an area of the room where he could hide while also seeing the doors and windows. Salvador then paused from his shooting momentarily before moving closer to the door, which was in a small inlet area in the hallway. He then put his arm through the door and unlocked it. He moved inside and began firing again, asking, "Are you all ready to die?" This time firing many more shots than before. One little girl in the room recalled seeing many of her friends fall to the ground as she herself collapsed due to the bullet fragments in her side, shoulder, back, and neck. Salvador backed out into the hallway once more. He then looked at the connected classroom, room 111. Much like before, he began to fire through the window on the door and into the classroom. The lock to room 111 had actually been broken for quite some time. The teacher had even sent numerous reports to the school asking for it to be fixed, all of which had gone ignored time and time again. Because of that, they were sitting ducks. When Salvador realized that he could open this door, he shoved the door open before stepping back into the hallway to fire another volley of bullets into the room. He then walked inside of the room and took aim at Mr. Reyes. Mr. Reyes said, "When I went around my kidney table to get to my spot, I got shot, and I fell to the floor. By then, he had already entered my room." Salvador, coming into the classroom, shouted, "Well, look what we have here," as he began to fire indiscriminately around the class. Aiming at each student one by one, he shot them multiple times each. Most of them either screamed for help or begged for him to stop, only for him to taunt them even more before firing a volley of shots at them, sometimes up to 10 per person. At some point during this wild firing, Salvador shot a bullet through the wall that would go on to hit another teacher, Miss Avila, in room 109 as well. After that, everything got quiet. Mr. Reyes couldn't hear any more sounds coming from any of his students. Salvador scooped up some blood from one of the students on his fingers. He made his way over and scrawled LOL on the classroom's whiteboard. He then sat behind the teacher's desk for a few moments. Shortly after, a girl in room 112 began to shout at police outside who had shouted, "Yell if y'all need help," saying, "We're in here." Salvador had thought that they were all dead. He stood up and went back to room 112 through the connected door in the classroom. Seeing Irma Garcia on the floor, he backed her further into the class. He shouted, "It's time to die, you guys are mine," as he entered inside. He then made eye contact with Garcia one more time.
Are you fucking... No. I just peeped what this dumbass officer just said, bro. Yell if y'all need us. Like, you ain't hear just 20 to at least 30 gunshots go off. Yell if y'all need us. Further jeopardizing the position that they're in. Knowing that the shooter or the threat is still in there.
He shouted "good night" before firing multiple shots toward her and killing her for good. He then noticed a girl trying to call 911 on a phone, shooting her in the head on the spot. He said, "You're all gonna die," before once again unleashing a stream of gunfire into the remaining students and the living teacher. He stopped to load a new magazine into his gun. While he did so, someone in the room began begging for their life. As soon as he popped the magazine in, he started firing indiscriminately around the room once more. Mr. Reyes, hearing this from the other room, felt that they all must be dead now. Salvador then called out, asking if anyone needed help. When one little boy stood up, he pulled up his gun and shot him dead that instant. 2 minutes after the massacre in the classrooms began, 3 UPD officers with 2 rifles entered into the school from the same entrance that Salvador had used. Shortly after, the UCISD chief, Pete Arredondo, along with another UCISD officer and 2 UPD officers, came in through the south entrance. One officer remembered seeing smoke and fog, noting that both of the classrooms were dark. Another remembered the smell of gunpowder hanging in the air, saying that the halls looked cloudy. Chief Arredondo noticed shell casings all over the ground. All of them could still hear Salvador continuing to execute children inside. After feeling that he had killed every single person in room 112, Salvador made his way back into 111. At this point, he had fired well over 100 rounds into all of the students and teachers inside. At that same time, 2 of the little girls in room 112, 11-year-old Mia Cerrillo and Chloe Torres, grabbed a phone off of their dead teacher, Irma Garcia, and started to call 911. They begged for them to please send an officer into the classroom, telling them what was happening and saying that they were still in danger.
With officers or Syracuse? 102, Chloe Torres.
So tasty, it could make Poseidon switch to a spoon. Holy divine taste.
I'm
gods.
bro. Get this fucking Greek girl out of my face, bro.
For dead friends and smeared their blood all over her face. This was done in order so that she herself could play dead more convincingly. She then lied there and waited for help. And waited and waited. Sergeant Coronado went with a few other officers and Chief Arredondo towards a 111 and 112. He didn't hear any more gunshots taking place as the whole building went quiet. As he approached, he could see clear bullet holes in the sheetrock. On his body cam footage, another officer could be heard saying, "It's an AR," showing that they certainly understood the kind of gun they were dealing with. Another officer, Officer Page, stopped near the room as well. Throughout this time, Mr. Reyes could hear the police out in the hallways, praying that they were about to make their way inside. Each and every time he heard them, they never came in. Eventually, he heard the police call into the classroom, asking Salvador to come out and talk, saying that they didn't want to hurt anyone. Ava Morales, the other teacher in room 112, called her husband, Ruben Ruiz, a Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District officer who was on scene, to tell him that she was inside the classroom and would die if she didn't get help. Ruben tried to push forward through the hallway, but he was detained by other officers who took his gun from him and dragged him off the scene. Ava would die from her wounds after.
kidding me, bro? Like, oh man.
It was around this point that the officers got a report that another woman had been shot nearby. This call was about Salvador's grandmother, who had gotten help from her neighbors. One officer and some EMTs made their way out to the scene. While Sally could walk, she was obviously in very bad shape. They put her into a stretcher and loaded her into an ambulance. Salvador's own uncle came to call 911, knowing that it must be his nephew who was shooting.
He's my nephew, man. He's the shooter. I was wondering maybe he could listen to me because he does listen to me.
Do you know of any?
He just said that he's bugging him.
And I don't want him to come to my house.
As they approached the room, they tried to move as quietly as possible. From the north side, Lieutenant Martinez decided to peek into the inlet area between the rooms. As he did so, Salvador fired at him from inside the classroom. Some fragments of the wall grazed the top of his head, causing him to start bleeding. Another officer, Sergeant Canales, was similarly hit by material that scratched his ear. In the panic, none of the officers shot back towards Salvador. The officers then retreated from the classrooms and back down the hallway. It was here that another critical mistake would be made. Chief Arredondo, feeling that the shooter was cornered, decided not to classify the ongoing case as an active shooter case. Instead, he classified it as a barricaded subject case.
This nigga is fucking retarded!
This was significant because it meant that they felt their shooter was contained, so instead of actually entering into the classrooms and trying to save some of the kids who were still alive, they were going to leave Salvador in there with them until they could successfully negotiate him out. For the time being, all they would focus on was evacuating the rest of the building little by little while they left the kids and the teachers to bleed out. Once the police began to cordon off the outside of the school, parents began begging the police to go in there and try to save their kids. On video, when being asked why the police weren't going in to rescue the children, one officer responded by screaming, "Because I'm having to deal with you." When the police refused to go in, some parents tried to enter into the building themselves. Officers started to shove the parents back and even tackled them to the ground. They told them that they would be tased if they tried to enter the building any further. Many videos were taken of these altercations and uploaded to the internet. At one point, the police pepper sprayed one parent trying to get into the building. Another mom was thrown into handcuffs when she tried to enter. When they released her from the cuffs, she was able to jump the fence, get to the school, and take her kids before the police found her. While you may think that their concern was to keep parents from entering into the school and being shot, their tyranny spread to other areas as well. Some children who evacuated were sitting in a bus parked alongside the street. One parent was full-on tased when they tried to get their kid from the bus to take them home.
What?
It was then, at 11:42, that the school finally announced a lockdown, saying that it was due to, quote, gunshots in the area, not even specifying a shooting at the school.
Oh my gosh, what? Yo, it's just so crazy because listen, so elementary school, I think elementary school's a lot together, right? Middle school, I ain't gonna lie, for school shootings to happen, there's a bunch of ways for me, like, probably get out. I'm not gonna lie, my nigga, me staying in the classroom, I ain't doing it. Especially in my high school was an outdoor high school. My nigga, I'm not staying in there. I'm not staying in there. I'm getting the fuck out. I don't care.
They made this announcement on Facebook of all things. In the announcement, they even lied and said that the students and staff were safe inside the building. Then and only then, a substantial amount of students began to be evacuated. With Salvador now in the room with nothing to do, he set his sights on Mr. Reyes, who he suspected might still be alive. While waiting on the police, he decided to begin torturing him. First, he picked up a thermos of cold water and poured it all down his back. Mr. Reyes said that he was actually lucky that he was in as bad of shape as he was. Since he couldn't move and was barely even breathing, it meant he showed no reaction. He couldn't have reacted if he tried. Salvador told him, "You're going to die and no one's going to miss you. You're a big loser."
this nigga voice so deep?
Still convinced that Mr. Reyes was alive, Salvador then dipped his hand in a pool of his own blood and began to splash it into his face repeatedly. Getting no reaction, he splashed more and more of it. At that point, Mr. Reyes' cell phone, still on his desk, started ringing. Salvador walked back over to the desk and picked up the phone. He then took the still ringing phone and dropped it onto Mr. Reyes' back, almost as if giving it to him. He then picked up the phone and dropped it on him again about 4 more times. At that point, Mr. Reyes said that he wished he would have just shot the phone to stop all the noise. He said that this all went on for a painfully long period of time before the police outside began to call out to Salvador again.
Sir, this is Uvalde with the school district police. Can you please put your firearm down? You don't want anyone else hurt, sir.
At that point, Mr. Reyes said that all Salvador did was clear his throat. Then, convinced that Mr. Reyes was alive after all, he shot him once more in the back. Even still, he didn't lose consciousness. While everything was a blur, he would be awake from then on out. Chief Arredondo called the UPD landline, telling them, "We have him in the room. He's got an AR-15. He's shot a lot. We don't have firepower right now. It's all pistols. I don't have a radio. I need you to bring a radio for me, and give my radio for me. I need to get 1 rifle. I'm trying to set him up. I need this building surrounded, with as many AR-15s as possible." He then requested a SWAT team to the school. Another UPD officer, calling a dispatcher, said, "We believe that he is barricaded in one of the offices. There's still a shooting." When he was asked if the door was locked or anything like that, he responded, "I am not sure, but we have a Halligan to break it." A Halligan is a crowbar-like tool that can be used to pry open a door. Salvador continued to linger around the classroom. From time to time, he would fire his gun again, likely at any students he suspected might still be alive. Mr. Reyes would not be the only one inside the classroom that Salvador would come to torture out of boredom while waiting for the police to come inside. He went around the rooms, finding any kids who appeared to be alive. He would spit on them, curse at them, and even stomp on their heads and limbs to the point of leaving impressions with his shoes. A United States Border Patrol tactical unit rushed out to the scene after getting a message from his wife who had been a teacher there. He was actually at a barber shop, getting a shotgun that his barber lent to him, and rushed out to the scene. He helped to evacuate some of the children. A U.S. Marshal on the scene was able to supply a ballistic shield. Other Border Patrol agents arrived as well, although they didn't bring the breaching tools. Little did they know, the lock to 111 was broken anyway, and Salvador couldn't have locked it if he tried. They didn't try to simply open the door. More shields were brought into the school. However, they would have been useless if they were put to use, as only one of them was graded for rifles. Most of the low-ranking officers on scene began to grow frustrated at the lack of action, whispering to each other that they needed to get inside the classroom as soon as possible.
Yeah, with kids.
Hey man, you want to let the kids out?
Salvador, through the door, yelled at the officers, "Don't make me come out first and make it complicated." Salvador then yelled, "Hey, you little fucking bitch," at a student. The student cried for help. Salvador then taunted him with, "You're alive, but you're almost dead. You're gonna die, little boy." The police could clearly hear this from the hallway, as it is even audible in the footage. They still didn't intervene. Soon after, Salvador yelled to the cops, "If you don't come in, I'm gonna kill the bitch." He then continued to taunt the little kids inside. Because of what had happened to their grandmother, Salvador's cousin knew exactly who the school shooter was. As soon as she heard about it, she made her way out to the scene. She told the police who the shooter was and begged for them to kill him already. She revealed that her son, Salvador's young cousin who he questioned about the schedules, was inside the building.
He's being transported, but yes, she's being transported.
You take him out of my stupid ass nephew. nephew. Okay. Fucking kill him. Kill him. Okay.
At 12:10, the first group of U.S. Marshals arrived on the scene to assist, having come from 70 miles away.
What the fuck? You niggas! Y'all niggas waited for niggas from 70 miles out. Keep in mind, chat, I want y'all to keep in mind, the first nigga that was on this scene had the authority and the power to kill him and shoot him in his fucking back, at least leave him in critical damage and in critical condition where he could be fucked up and possibly not pursue the act. Just remember that. And these niggas waited this long, and these children are getting tortured, threatened, all these things. Now all these kids got PTSD of them laying around. I'm pretty sure these kids had dreams, bro. Dreams of laughing with their friends that they will never see again, and their friends are gone. This nigga around this time was the same age as me. Like, bro, it's just fucking... I thought this shit happened in 2023.
If there's kids in there, we need to go in there. Uncaring, another officer responded with, "Whoever is in charge will determine that." Anyone who suggested that they storm the room was quickly waved off the scene. The UCISD chief, Pedro Arredondo, was the de facto man in charge on the scene, but he was doing very little to actually get to Salvador. It has been speculated that Arredondo may have assumed that all the children inside were already dead, and instead wanted to focus on gathering more equipment before performing a breach of the room. It wasn't long before the little girls in classroom 112 called 911 again. They informed them that they were still very much in danger.
That's really pissing me off.
They're inside of the building, okay? You stay quiet.
Bitch, I'ma die!
All the victims. Child call 911. The room is full of victims. Child 911 call.
He then entered into the school and calmly told the other officers, a child just called that they have victims in there, before walking outside again.
A child just called that they have victims in there.
The girls then called again for a third time, once again begging for help and saying that a lot of people inside were dead. Arredondo was more concerned with putting a sniper on the roof of the school, wasting valuable time by instructing officers on how to best do that. While he was doing so, the girls called 911 a fourth time, saying that they had found 8 to 9 students that were still alive and could be saved. Again, they were ignored.
You got... Oh my fucking... This shit like the clown meme! Y'all had the shooter trapped. I understand waiting for like more people. That's fine. That's fine. Nobody really wants to be the first one in that room and get shot. I understand that. Me as a person, I completely understand that. Like, I truly, truly do. But this shit is so stupid. It's pissing me off. Y'all niggas waited for U.S. Marshals who were 70 miles out. So, I knew this situation was bad. But me actually seeing a documented explanation of what the fuck really happened really lets me know y'all niggas failed as a department. But I'm telling y'all right now, wherever I live, hey, them police officers on that. Them niggas on that. Miami, them niggas on that too. Jackson, I ain't gonna lie, them niggas Jacksonville get away with so much shit, but I don't know. But there's just certain departments that are just trained completely different and operate a certain way that if this shit goes on, nigga, they're killing that nigga. It don't fucking matter. From that point on, when he went into that, it's a kid with the AR walking into elementary school and you hear gunshots. You don't make no march to him at all. And now he's sitting there torturing him, and he said, "Hey, if y'all don't come here, I'm gonna kill this little boy."
Lieutenant Mariano Pargas was once again informed of the call. He walked back into the building, mentioned it briefly, and then went back outside to call himself to hear the information.
Okay, in the call that you got in from the
oh my controller.
What did you say?
Okay,
Fucking ridiculous.
Chloe.
Fucking ridiculous.
She's in room 112, Mariano 112. She's with the 9 students that are still alive. That's
So how many are still alive now?
18 are still alive. She's not too sure.
And how many more?
She's not too sure how many are actually DOA or possibly injured. We're trying to get information.
Okay.
After ending with that "okay, thanks," he walked back inside and informed some of the other officers about it. However, when he then talked to a Texas Ranger, he neglected to mention the living children in the room. He then left the school and didn't come back again for whatever reason. When Pete Arredondo heard of the calls from the students inside classroom 112, he didn't change the situation from a barricaded suspect case into an active shooting case. In fact, there is more evidence that he tried to hide that information. Some officers were seen on video being told that there were no children inside the classrooms at all.
Do we have anyone that's hit on this side? Huh? Any of the kids or anyone hit?
No, we don't know anything about that. No kids are.
Who's asking for the pool?
Everything's closed. Like the kids are not in there. Can we check with the officer to be sure if anyone's?
Now, at 12:17, roughly 45 minutes after the massacre in the classrooms began, the school reported, once again over Facebook, that there was an active shooter on campus and that the authorities were on scene. After, Arredondo was heard outside, screaming to officers, "Tell them to fucking wait, no one comes in," likely referring to the concerned parents. Pete Arredondo would start to spend most of the rest of his time in the hallway trying to negotiate with Salvador inside the classroom. Each and every time he would get no response. Still, he kept calling out to him, over and over and over.
Some people are born leaders, others are not, bro. I'm not saying I would fare better than him in this situation. Obviously not, because I've never been put into a predicament as such as this. But you're a chief. I'm pretty sure you've been in similar situations. Whether if you was just a basic officer or a lieutenant, something of the sort. Pretty sure you've been in an active threat situation. There is no way in fucking hell something in you was not clicking and it's just like, nah, we're just gonna negotiate.
Over again, wasting at least 30 minutes on this tactic despite getting zero results.
Mr. Ramos, can you hear us? Mr. Ramos? Please respond. Salvador. Can you hear us, sir? Please don't hurt anyone. These are innocent children. Please put your firearm down. We don't want anybody else hurt. Señor Ramos, me escuche. Mr. Ramos, Mr. Ramos, Mr.
A couple of minutes later, Arredondo, either lying or very uninformed of the situation, said, "We've lost 2 kids. The walls are thin. If he starts shooting, we're going to lose more kids.
Yeah,
I
lost
hate to
more
say
kids than
we
that.
have to put those to the side right now." He began to try and speak to Salvador through the door again, asking him to surrender, and again he got no response. He tried again a few minutes later, again to be ignored. Salvador shot several times again at children he believed were alive in 111. He then shouted to the police, "Hey, come and get him." A minute later, he yelled, "Hey, come inside, bitch," followed by something inaudible. It's highly likely that Salvador was planning to die from the police's gunfire, much like many other mass shooters plan. If he were to negotiate, he wouldn't get that from them. He preferred to sit and wait for them to barge into the room and go out in a blaze of gunfire. When that didn't happen, he began to grow frustrated, never responding to the negotiation but shouting taunts at them from time to time. Even he couldn't seem to understand why they weren't coming in to get the kids. Arredondo was growing annoyed as well. He knew that he had dug his grave with this one. He had wasted a lot of valuable time, saved no children, and still hadn't even gotten into the room. He began to tell other officers, "People are going to ask why we're taking so long. We're trying to preserve the rest of the life. There is a window over there, obviously. The door is probably going to be locked. That is the nature of this place. I'm going to get some more keys to test." Starting at 12:30, more officers entered into the south door and walked past Chief Arredondo and Sergeant Coronado, stacking up on the sides of 111 and 112 themselves, waiting to breach the rooms. After 5 more minutes, the Halligan tool that they wanted but didn't need finally arrived. The little girls in 112 called 911 once again, saying that Salvador had fired a shot again. They were told to stay on the line and be quiet. 6 minutes later, after waiting around, Arredondo said, "Just so you understand, we think there are some injuries in there. And so you know what we did, we cleared off the rest of the building so we wouldn't have any more, besides what's already in there, obviously." This was while the girls in 112 were begging for the dispatcher to send the police inside. They said that they could clearly hear them outside talking. Arredondo didn't seem to be so willing to enter. He told his officers, "If y'all are ready to do it, you do it, but you should distract him out that window." As the girls once again begged for the police to come inside, the DPS captain, Joel Betancourt, on police radio, gave a command for the breachers to wait, saying, "The team that's going to make the breach needs to stand by. The team that's going to breach needs to stand by." Another 15 minutes later, at 12:50, some of the Border Patrol officers got a janitor's key to enter into room 111. They then turned the key in the unlocked door, waiting to go inside. The Border Patrol had decided to finally make their way in regardless of what Arredondo wanted. Commander Guerrero had another agent give him cover with the one rifle-graded riot shield and entered into the room with his gun drawn. Those two, along with 2 others, entered into the classroom. That was when Salvador, who had been hiding in the closet, kicked open the door with his gun drawn and began to fire at the officers. The officers fired back, finally killing Salvador and ending the rampage. The police began to frantically enter into the room and started taking some students out, unsure of who was alive and who wasn't. The scene...
Whoa, what the fuck,
so
bruh?
grisly that many of the police officers ran outside to vomit.
Dog, that's just
tells
blood.
you
That's
anything as to how
awful.
bad the scene was. Officers were heard on body cam footage warning the others to avoid stepping on skull fragments littered throughout the classrooms. Some students at the school have said in the years since that limbs were severed by the shots, as well as heads. Most of the police had never seen anything like that in their entire lives, especially when it came to such young victims. Nevertheless, there were still some inside that could be saved. Blood coated the hallways as they rushed to get them outside. The scene was chaos as police officers were ordered to shut up so that they could listen for students' voices, but they continued to shout over each other. Stretchers were wheeled into the rooms and students were loaded onto them. However, it was found that the majority of them were dead, including every single student in room 111. 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in the shooting. 2 of them were 9-year-olds. Jacqueline...
That is 21 people.
Jalen Cazares and Eliana Amia Garcia. The majority of them were 10-year-olds. Nevia Alyssa Bravo, McKenna Lee Elrod, Jose Manuel Flores Jr., Isaiah Sergio Garcia, Amiri Joe Garza.
By now, them
Xavier
niggas, bro,
James
these
Lopez,
kids would have been
Jace
in
Carmelo
middle
Riva.
school, bro. These kids would have been in middle school, bro. This is what I want y'all to understand. Bro, holy fuck. These, they're so incompetent. It's disgusting.
Tess Marie Mata, Alethea Haven Ramirez, Annabelle Guadalupe Rodriguez, Maite Juliana Rodriguez, Alexandria Ania Rubio, Jayla Nicole Silguero, Eliana Cruz Torres, and Rogelio Fernandez Torres. 2 of them were 11-year-olds, Miranda Gail Mathis and Layla Marie Salazar. And finally, 2 teachers had lost their lives in room 112, 48-year-old Irma Linda Garcia and 44-year-old Eva Morales. 18 people were injured, including 14 kids, Mr. Reyes, Salvador's grandma Sally, and the 2 police officers that were grazed in the gunfire. However, several of the injured wouldn't live much longer, dying en route to the hospital. Had they had been rescued earlier, there was a chance that they would have survived. They had lived for 70 minutes with no care, after all. That extra 70 minutes in intensive care very well could have saved them. The surviving kids from room 112 were put on a bus in order to regroup with their families. This included the 2 girls who had been calling the police, along with at least 1 other boy. In the end, 11 kids and 3 others were admitted into the hospital for emergency care. It was found that a further 2 had died during their arrival. Some of them, including Salvador's grandma, who was airlifted, were taken to the University Hospital in San Antonio. At 2 p.m., parents of the children at the school were notified that they could now come pick up their kids. Given that the bus services were canceled, parents from other schools were asked to do the same as well. It was announced that the school term for that year was officially over, with only a few days having remained anyway. Graduation ceremonies would be canceled as well. Shortly after, the Uvalde Memorial Hospital held an emergency blood drive. The South Texas Blood and Tissue Center told the public that they would urgently need donations after the shooting.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver.
They sent about 15 units of blood to Uvalde on a helicopter to use in the hospitals there. It wasn't long before 2,000 people had donated blood. In total, 315 rounds were found inside of the school. 140 of them were spent casings, while 173 others were live. 922 more rounds were found outside the building, most likely in the rest of Salvador's magazines that he left behind in the truck. Some of the rounds that Salvador fired weren't even found, with it being determined that he fired 164 times in total. The police had fired 35 rounds themselves in total, 8 in the hallway and 27 in the classroom where Salvador was killed. Many of the students who died in 111 and 112 were put into body bags and left in the hallway of the school. That is where they would remain for the night. The crime scene photo of the hallways of the elementary school filled with body bags in the dead of night has haunted those who have seen it. Some parents would have to wait until late at night and into the early hours of the morning for the final confirmation of their children's deaths.
Fucking failure as a department. Fucking failure as a chief.
Immediately following the Robb Elementary School shooting, the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Police Department and the Uvalde Police Department came to be criticized heavily for their response to the incident. As controversy broiled, Salvador Ramos's remains were going to be held by the Uvalde County Coroner for weeks. All of the local funeral homes refused to have any sort of service for him out of both disgust and respect for the victims. Eventually, he was cremated by Cast Ridge Mortuary in Crystal City. He was buried in a cemetery under a fake name, that being Lonnie, with no date of death in hopes of deterring vandalism. Salvador's mom came to speak to a Mexican TV station, saying that she had no explanation as
This nigga was born the same month as me, bro.
Mom came to speak to a Mexican TV station, saying that she had no explanation as to why her son did what he did. She stirred up controversy even further by strangely stating he had his reasons for doing what he did, telling viewers, please don't judge him. She added, I only want the innocent children who died to forgive me. She said that Salvador was not a monster, while admitting he could be a bit aggressive. Salvador's father condemned the attack that much more, taking a lot of the blame onto himself. He said, he should have just killed me, instead of doing something like that. A memorial had been created outside of the school for the victims in the attack. It was covered in balloons, candles, and crosses. One local man made 21 different crosses for each of the victims, inscribed with their own names, and set them up outside the school. A lot of people came from outside the city to contribute to the memorial and pay their respects. Many local businesses offered free headstones and funerals to the victims. Even different food trucks and restaurant owners sent food to those affected by the shooting as well. It was announced by the UCISD Superintendent Hal Harrell that Robb Elementary School would never be reopened. It was set to be demolished to avoid re-traumatizing anyone related to the shooting. A board meeting was held and it was decided that the students and staff would move to a new campus. Mia Cirillo, the little girl who called the police at least 5 times while covered in blood and pretending to be dead, was said to have been left extremely traumatized.
Of course!
She was left unable to sleep, with large patches of her hair falling out regularly. An online fundraiser was made to help pay for her therapy with a goal of $10,000. She ended up receiving almost 20 times that, with the fundraiser ending at $199,000. She was a little too afraid to talk on camera at first, but expressed that she wanted to share her story so that others could know the horror of what it's like to live through a school shooting.
These 2 kids did more than what the fucking police officer did, bro. Shout out to him, bro. It's crazy.
And hopefully to prevent more. Keep in mind, she was...
And that fuck nigga that did Douglas, I swear to God that nigga didn't die. I swear to God that nigga don't die. Oh my God. Oh my fucking goodness, bro. If he don't... He wasn't sentenced to death. How? I really need niggas to understand this shit.
years old.
Or things that you want different, what would it be?
To have security.
Do you feel safe at school?
Fuck no. Nigga, my schools never got hit, nothing like that. Even I still didn't feel safe at school. Nigga, I was paranoid. What the fuck? And literally my last day there, literally, somebody threatened to shoot that bitch up. I remember one year, look, it was one year my mama, I told my mama that somebody threatened to shoot this shit. Nigga, she opened that door, she seen me, she was like, "You staying home?" I said, "Yes." Fuck, nigga, somebody threatened to shoot up school. You think I'm gonna be there? No.
You think it's gonna happen?
Like, for example, if my kid come up to me, say, "Dada, somebody said they go shoot up the school." Huh? You stay your ass on to them. Tell all your friends they could come over. I don't care. If they parents don't fuck with it, tell them they could come to my house. Come with me. I don't care. Y'all niggas not going to school.
What happens if... Too soft, too soft. Too strong.
That's that boy Cornelius Jenkins. I'm still streaming right now.
When Chief Lieutenant Mariano Pargas, who failed to mention the 911 calls from the classroom, was interviewed again after that information was known, he said that he couldn't remember the calls. He instead claimed, "The last thing we thought was that the shooter had actually shot the kids. We thought he had shot up in..."
Nah, I'm gonna just walk in there with AR-15. "Hey kids, how you doing?" No. I don't even know why assault rifles or rifles in general.
The air, broke in the lights. We had no idea what was behind those doors.
A pistol was one thing.
But in a leaked call with the Texas Rangers, he ended up letting it slip that he very well knew the kids were inside.
What do you need him for?
The room was extremely dark, and we didn't know where he was, or the kids were standing, they were by him, or not knowing what was behind the doors.
Joey Garcia, the husband of one of the teachers who died in 112, Irma Garcia, died only 2 days after the shooting from a heart attack while attending a memorial for the victims. His family later stated that the heart attack was due to the grief of losing his wife. Their 4 children were left without parents. The UCISD created a fund for those kids and other victims. Soon after, an anonymous donor paid $175,000 to go to the funerals.
Damn.
Catholic Extension, a non-profit organization that tends to finance impoverished Catholics, announced that it was giving 30 full scholarships for the students wounded in the attacks to attend a different school in Uvalde. Soon after the massacre occurred, the FBI and the ATF began to assist the local police in their investigation. They quickly grabbed Salvador's guns and took them in for an analysis. Soon after,
what's needed for an investigation? The threat was there. The threat was eliminated. I'm sure.
Texas Rangers began to assist as well. The response by the police to the shooting was so abysmal that even the United States Department of Justice announced that they would be reviewing the law enforcement response at the request of the mayor of Uvalde himself.
Damn!
In the beginning, misinformation about the massacre and contradicting accounts between the different agencies who assisted in the response were making the investigation very difficult. Some of them claimed that Salvador used a handgun, others correctly stated that it was a rifle. Some claimed that his body armor made it even more dangerous, when it came to be known that he had no body armor at all. Some claimed that an officer exchanged gunfire with him outside the school, but then it came to be known that an officer had asked for permission to fire but no gunfight took place. It was said that this was a school resource officer, but then it came to be clear that the school resource officer had driven off to pursue a teacher. It was an absolute mess. At first, the Texas Department of Safety, or DPS Director Steve McCraw, said that the police engaged immediately. He said, "They contained the gunman in the classroom and put the tactical stack together in a very orderly way and breached."
No.
However, he soon changed his story to add that they were forced to delay the response because they needed specialty equipment, armor, snipers, and negotiators. The DPS even blamed a teacher for letting Salvador in, saying that she had propped open the door. This was not true.
You think the teacher gonna pop the door open and just let the nigga welcome in?
As the reason he got in was due to the fact that the door could only be locked from the outside. While the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, originally praised the police for their response, it was before he knew all the details. When he came to learn the facts, he quickly changed his tune and began to call for an investigation into the lack of initiative displayed by the police. He said, "Bottom line would be, why did they not choose the strategy that would have been the best to get in there and to eliminate the killer and to rescue the children?" The governor announced that he had been misled and given inaccurate information, saying that he was absolutely livid about it. The mayor of Uvalde was especially frustrated at the governor's initial praise. 2 days after the massacre, at a press conference, a DPS official was asked whether the police had made a critical error. Anulfo Reyes, the teacher in room 111, had lost every single one of his students in the shooting. He himself had been shot in the arm, back, and lung. From his hospital bed, he criticized the police, calling them cowards. He said, "They sit there and did nothing for our community. They took a long time to go in. After everything, I get more angry because you cops have a bulletproof vest. I have nothing." He continued, "Nothing gets you ready for this. We trained our kids to sit under the table, but we set them up like ducks. You can give us all the training you want, but gun laws have to change. I will go anywhere to the end of the world to not let my students die in vain. I will go to the end of the world to make sure things get changed." According to the DPS, before the Border Patrol arrived on scene, the 19 officers who were coming in and out of the school made, in their own words, no effort to get inside the classroom where Salvador was hiding. They said that this was because of the false statements that Arredondo made that Salvador was isolated alone in a classroom where he could do no harm, i.e. the barricaded suspect response. Angeli Gomez, the mom who was handcuffed by the police and later jumped the fence to rescue her kids, was interviewed by the media. She said that she was still on probation for charges she had received a decade before, and that the police used this in order to threaten her into not telling her story. They told her that, if she did, they would press obstruction of justice charges that would violate her probation and send her to jail. Soon after, her car was stopped in a traffic stop, where a police officer accused her of harboring illegal immigrants in her car. After, she noticed a cop parked at her house for about 45 minutes, flashing its lights to let her know that it was present. However, her story came to be doubted by some when the Uvalde Leader News published an article saying that she was never handcuffed. Many believe that this, however, was a story pushed by the police to the publication in order to ruin her reputation even further.
Crazy.
She hasn't responded to the article herself. Further controversy came about when the story of Ruben Ruiz hit the public, the man who had wanted to enter into the school to save one of the teachers, his wife, and was taken out of the building by the other officers. He was so disgusted himself that he resigned from his position in the police department. When the Uvalde Police Department's acting chief, Lieutenant Mariano Pargas, was interviewed after the shooting, he never mentioned knowing that any of the students were inside the classrooms, despite getting the calls themselves. Still, he actually took credit for wanting to enter into the classroom, saying that they removed Ruben Ruiz because, quote, "We were just afraid that he was going to try to run in the classroom and try to do what I wanted to do if I could have done it." It came to be known that Chief Pete Arredondo had been elected to the Uvalde City Council only a few weeks before the shooting took place. The mayor, Dan McLaughlin, said that a special meeting where he would have been sworn in would no longer take place, saying that they were going to focus more on the families that lost loved ones instead. However, he lamented that, in his words, "Nothing in the city charter, election code, or Texas Constitution that prohibits Arredondo from taking the oath of office," saying that there wasn't an official investigation taking place into him. He was later sworn in secret without a ceremony, becoming a full-fledged city council member. A Texas state senator, Roland Gutierrez, said that he had heard from the Commission on State Emergency Communications that Arredondo had no knowledge that any of the kids in the classrooms had called 911. This was, of course, a lie. However, he didn't take a hard stance, admitting that he didn't know for sure at the time. He had even heard that Arredondo didn't have a radio on his person at all, which does seem to be true. However, other officers had been there relaying information from the dispatchers. It wasn't long before the New York Times was able to find definitive proof that the police officers on scene were well aware of the children trapped inside the classrooms. On June 2nd, a private meeting was held at the Uvalde City Hall where many of the higher-ups from around town were present. The meeting was arranged by the governor's office, and it was said to be in relation to rising tensions between Uvalde officials. During this meeting, the most clear signs of a police cover-up were displayed. A one-page document, very transparently titled The Narrative, was given to McCraw, the director of the DPS, by the city attorney Paul Tarski. This was, just as it sounds, the narrative surrounding the police response that those involved had written themselves. This was the narrative that they wanted to be given to the media. The city officials then began to pressure Steve McCraw and the DPS to start using their story. It was clear that the document was very favorable toward the police, highlighting, in their words, the quick arrival of officers at the school and their success in containing the gunman. Some excerpts were, within 5 minutes of receiving a report of an accident at approximately 11:30 a.m. on May 24th, patrol officers Mendoza and Salcedo and their patrol sergeant, Daniel Coronado, were on scene taking fire. They immediately pursued the suspect as he ran to rob school. This was the first lie, as they didn't take fire outside of the school. They also didn't run into the school immediately after Salvador did. Another excerpt stated, Officers Pete Arredondo, Donald Page, Daniel Coronado, and Adrian Gonzalez followed the sound of gunfire and entered the west end of Rob's school, while officers J.B. Martinez and Eddie Canales entered into the east end of Rob's school, also following the sound of gunfire. There was zero hesitation on any of these officers' part. They moved directly towards the gunfire. The total number of persons saved by the heroes that are local law enforcement and the other assisting agencies is over 500 per UCISD. These were more lies, as the officers weren't able to tell where the gunfire was coming from, thus couldn't move right towards it. All of them also hesitated, grouping up in the hallway for quite a long time before even approaching the classrooms. Next.
That Bumble's hungry.
Don't worry, we've got enough for everyone.
They immediately approached the door and were fired upon by the suspect with an AR rifle approximately 4 times, with Eddie Canales taking shrapnel to his ear and Javi Martinez being grazed by a bullet to the head. With both officers bleeding, they took cover a few yards down the hall to avoid fire and called for backup. Time was not wasted, but each minute was used to save the lives of children and teachers. Again, their approach to the door was far from immediate. Martinez was also stated to have been injured by material from the wall, not a bullet to the head. Then we have U.S. Marshals arrived with shields. No one else, not UPD, not UCISD, not Border Patrol, not DPS, not Homeland Security, and not any other agency had shields available. Bortak insisted that all the rooms be cleared, i.e. all the children and teachers be removed, prior to use of the shields in breach of room 112. There wasn't any evidence that Border Patrol insisted that all of the rooms be cleared before they made their breach. They also had the shields, many of which weren't even graded for a rifle, on scene long before the breach was made. And then, absent the shields, every UPD officer was of the opinion that breaching the door was suicide, and every Texas Ranger or DPS agent who took their statements agreed. Not a single officer present, including DPS troopers and Texas Rangers, believed that they could save lives by approaching that door and being killed one by one. In reality, several officers had expressed interest in breaching the room as quickly as possible, with one of them being dragged out of the building for insisting on doing so. There is also no evidence that they believed they couldn't save any lives. Stephen McCraw of the DPS was highly critical of the narrative document. He refused to endorse the document as it was presented to him, saying he disagreed with their summary of the events. District Attorney Bushby also objected, arguing that she was concerned about releasing such inaccurate and incomplete information. On June 3rd, the board of the UCISD held a meeting to determine whether they would be taking any action against Pete Arredondo. They decided, not so surprisingly, not to take any disciplinary action against him. On June the 7th, Arredondo didn't attend the city council meeting. When the mayor was asked why that was, he said that he couldn't answer that question. It was on June 9th that Arredondo started to give his first interviews with the media and comment on the case. He said that the only reason he waited that long was to avoid blaming others or worsen the community's grief. Pedro Pete Arredondo said that he arrived at the school and thought that he was the first officer there. He said that he abandoned his police radio somewhere because he thought it would slow him down, saying that he wanted
This nigga is a liar.
When this was scrutinized, he said that the radio's antenna would bump into him while he ran and might fall off of his belt. He further said that he knew that the radios didn't usually work well in school buildings anyway. He further lied, saying that he was completely unaware of the 911 calls being made from the classrooms because he didn't have his radio, despite being in the same hallway as the other officers talking about it. He said that he didn't know that he was the incident commander, thinking he was a frontline responder. This again would be a lie because, according to the National Incident Management System, the first person on scene is the incident commander. If he really did think that he was the first officer on scene, as he said, he would have known that that role would have gone to him. The DPS also described him as such, never implying that it was unclear to anyone else at the time. Arredondo said that he tried to open the door to classroom 111 while another UPD officer tried to open the door to 112, but both were locked. This was either an outright lie or they didn't try hard enough to open it. He then said that the door to 111 had a steel jam that prevented it from being opened. This was also later determined to be false. Arredondo then said that he didn't know that Salvador was firing from inside the classroom or that some other officers had been grazed. He would have had to be blind and deaf for this to be true. He was in the hallway himself for almost the entire time, and all of the
self-proclaimed first responder doesn't know that a man get grazed.
other officers continued to talk about being shot at throughout the entire incident. He said
Ooh.
that he was provided at least 30 keys to the rooms, which worked. He said that he didn't get a master key until a while later, when another officer called him on his cell phone to tell him so. This further damaged his credibility as, while he didn't have his radio, he did have his phone and was able to answer it when needed. Then he denied he was a coward and spit a line almost straight from the narrative document. He said, "The objective was to save as many lives as we could, and the extraction of the students from the classrooms by all that were involved saved over 400 of our Uvalde students and teachers before we gained access to the shooter and eliminated the threat." The same day that Arredondo gave that interview, a committee began to investigate the shooting on behalf of the Texas House of Representatives. They explained that the investigation would be done in private in order to preserve accuracy and be as thorough as possible before coming to a conclusion. It took several weeks before it was revealed that the police didn't even try to open the door to the classroom for 77 minutes before the Border Patrol made their way in. This was because a law enforcement source close to the investigation leaked that information to the media after seeing the surveillance video from inside the school himself. The media at first wondered if this was because they assumed the door was locked, but the leaker expressed that many officers were aware it likely wasn't. Still, he said that Pete Arredondo had tried various different keys out, but not on the doors to 111 or 112. Instead, he tried them on other doors while trying to determine which was a master.
Keep in mind, all the students in one classroom were all killed. All of them. I think it was the students between in 111 was all killed. Bro. That is a lot of fucking kids, bro. The Parkland shit, bro, I'll never not be disgusted by that shit, bro. Genuinely because of how many fucking people died in that situation. And how much was lost. 30 people, I think, were shot.
The DPS director came to testify during the Texas Senate committee meeting on the Uvalde school shooting that the police response was an, quote, abject failure and antithetical to everything we have learned over the past 2 decades, saying that, objectively, the police could have easily stopped the shooting within 3 minutes. He pointed the finger at Pete Arredondo, saying that he was the on-scene commander at the time. He said, "The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children." The Texas House investigative community came to release a 77-page report detailing the systematic failures and the poor decision-making on part of the police, saying that they exacerbated the shooting.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49.
The committee heavily criticized state and federal officials as well. Things were made even worse when it was confirmed via the records of multiple complaints to the school that the lock to room 111 was indeed broken, meaning that the police's claims of needing a master key or breaching tools before they could continue was entirely baseless, either a ridiculous mistake that costed an hour or part of an intentional delay. Like with many other school shootings, some people immediately jumped to the conclusion that the shooting was either a psyop or a false flag operation. Many of them were convinced by the simple fact that Salvador had enough money to buy the 2 rifles and ammunition. While it was a good amount of money for an 18-year-old, saving up around $5,000 over a year of working 3 different part-time jobs, Whataburger, Wendy's, and air conditioning, when you have no expenses at all isn't much of an ask. The minimum wage in Uvalde was $7.25. Even at working a low 20 hours a week, that would amount to $6,960 over the year. Assuming that Salvador did spend a little of his money here and there, saving a bit over $5,000 wouldn't have been much of a stretch. Knowing that Wendy's pays an average of $10 to $15 an hour in Texas, it would have been even easier. The Donna Independent School District in Donna, Texas, about 240 miles from Uvalde, got a threat towards one of their own schools. Due to that, class was canceled while the threat was investigated. The Department of Homeland Security got involved, saying that this was due to both the false flag theories and the praise that Salvador was getting online. They said, individuals in online forums that routinely promulgate domestic violent extremist and conspiracy theory-related content have praised this shooting and encouraged copycat attacks. Adding that other people aim to spread disinformation and incite grievances, including claims it was a government-staged event meant to advance gun control measures. The city of Uvalde began to try its best, through their attorneys, to prevent the release of police records related to the shooting. They said that the information was of no concern to the public, that there was embarrassing information related to criminal history, and that they may expose the police's strategies related to preventing and predicting crime. They also said that they could expose anyone involved to a risk of harm. The city also cited what is called the dead suspect loophole as well, where information is suppressed in a case that has no convictions, such as when a suspect is already dead. On June 22nd, the UCISD board decided to put Arredondo on administrative leave for an unspecified amount of time. Shortly after, on July 2nd, Arredondo decided to resign from his position on the city council entirely. It wasn't long after that the Uvalde School Board voted unanimously to terminate his contract as the police chief. The district attorney of Uvalde County adamantly objected to releasing a portion of the security camera video taken in the hallway during the police response to the shooting. While the clip was edited to end right before the police entered into the classroom, didn't show any violence on screen, and was edited to remove sounds of screaming, he still opposed it. The mayor, however, thought that the video needed to be shown to the public. On July 12th, that video was released. It was 77 minutes of video compiled from both the hallway footage and some of the police body cam overlaid on top when appropriate.
Damn.
While the video was intended to be shown to the families of the victims first and then released to the public later, the opposite happened when the media ended up having a copy leaked and publishing it before that. This created a lot of anger among some of the family members, but others were actually happy about it being released to the public so that the community could see that they were being lied to about the police response. When the video leaked, all hell broke loose. Outrage was everywhere as it showed that the police had not only lied about their swift response, their early attempts to enter the room, and more, it also showed how not seriously they were taking the situation. Some cops were seen fist-bumping each other, others looking at their phones, and one of them was seen taking some hand sanitizer from a dispenser on the wall near the classrooms. More than anything, it showed them mainly only standing around while Salvador executed children and tortured his victims just behind the unlocked door for 70 whole minutes. Salvador's mom came to say that the months since the shooting were very difficult for her. She and her current boyfriend, Juan Alvarez, left town after the murders due to death threats. After that, they were kind of on the run. They moved to Oklahoma for 8 months, but she was unable to find a job there. She got arrested within 1 month of the shooting for criminal trespass and driving without a license, only to be released shortly after. After that, she bounced around from job to job elsewhere. During this, she was arrested yet again, this time for assaulting her boyfriend. After, they decided to move back to Uvalde, together, and live at one of her mom's properties free of charge. She said that nobody will hire her now and that they both lived off of Juan's $900 disability checks and about $600 in food stamps that they got together. She now sells random products out of her house to make a bit of money. She also admitted that she keeps Salvador's room just as it was, almost treating it as a shrine to him. She's been proud to show this to the media, even holding up her son's clothes for the camera. However, Adriana got into trouble again when she actually got into a confrontation with one of the victims' families, yelling at them in public. It was even caught on camera. This was the family of Amiri Joe Garza, and when they spoke badly of her son, she yelled that they had no right to judge him. If anyone in the world had the right to pass judgment on him, it would have been them. She shouted, "You have no right to judge my son. No you don't. No you don't. May God forgive y'all." All they wanted was answers. As the family demanded to know why Salvador did what he did, they responded with, "What reasons? Because he was pissed off at you? Because you destroyed him? What reason did he have to kill 21 people?" Adriana replied that Salvador had mental health issues. She said, "I know my son was a coward. You don't think I don't know that? I know. You don't think I'm carrying all that with me? I know, and I'm sorry." Finally came time for the first officer involved in the handling of the shooting to face consequences. This was a Texas state trooper named Crimson Elizondo. She was investigated by the DPS for what they called actions inconsistent with training and department requirements. As a result, she resigned from her job. However, shortly after, she actually got a job as a UCISD police officer. Crimson had been caught on body camera footage admitting to the other officers that she wasn't responding to the case in a hands-on way because, More or less, the kids in there weren't hers and she didn't care. She mostly stood outside despite being one of the first officers on scene. She told them, "If my son had been in there, I would have not been outside, I promise you that." When this audio leaked, she was fired from her job at UCISD as well. In October of 2022, another Texas State Trooper, Sergeant Juan Maldonado, was fired from the DPS. He had also been one of the first officers to arrive on scene within the first 5 minutes and failed to act in any meaningful way. More strange arrests would come to be made as well, one of which was the arrest of Nathan Cruz. This was Salvador's 17-year-old cousin, who was arrested on August 8, 2023, about a year later. This was after he made a threat that was deemed to be terroristic in nature after he told his sister, "I'm planning on doing the same thing as my cousin," adding that he would shoot her in the head before he did it. To make matters worse, they lived within walking distance of an elementary school as well. He was hit with a felony charge of making a terroristic threat to the public and another misdemeanor charge of making a terroristic threat against a family member. He was hit with a bond of $160,000 and remained in jail until the case was dismissed entirely due to a missing witness. Throughout 2023, an 18-year-old girl named Victoria Gabriela Rodriguez Morales continued to claim that she had been Salvador's girlfriend before the massacre. She said that they had actually planned it together, but he decided to carry it out without her. Given that there is nothing to back this up at all, her story isn't believed. However, she was known to issue threats to schools herself starting all the way back in 2018. That year was when she was sent to a juvenile detention center in Texas, but then she started sending more threats, saying that she would, quote, "kill public officials, shoot schools, and kill teachers and students." One condition of her parole was that she would have to move back to Puerto Rico. However, she continued to harass schools in Uvalde even there, especially after the shooting. She threatened not only the school itself, but hospitals and even the survivors.
Just kill this bitch.
She was found in Puerto Rico and arrested on 13 charges related to interstate threats. She's looking at up to 60 years in prison.
Damn!
She badmouthed the victims in the shooting, calling them all the little loser souls and saying that she hoped they were burning in hell. Of all of the people arrested, one was fairly distant from the case, geographically at least. You may remember Salvador's online friend, the German girl who he told that he was going to shoot up the school. While she originally responded with "cool," she deleted this message in hopes that no officials would find it. However, the message was stored internally on Facebook and screenshots had already been spread around and discussed on Yubo. She actually got arrested and faced trial in Frankfurt on charges of failing to report planned crimes. She didn't see jail time, instead being ordered to undergo what they called educational measures. Later, CNN reported on some of the audio and video related to the body cam of the UPD police chief, Lieutenant Mariano Pargas. You'll remember him as the man who got told about the 911 calls coming from inside the classroom and said "okay" before waving it away. It was found that he made a call to a dispatcher, asking how many more were still alive in the room, being told that 8 to 9 likely were. It was found that he informed Border Patrol of the information, but neglected to mention it to the Texas Rangers. Just 2 days before the city council was to determine whether or not to fire him, Pargas retired from his job at the UPD. In January 2023, another Texas Ranger was fired, this time being Christopher Ryan Kindle. This was because he had failed to treat Salvador as an active shooter despite his specific training meaning that he should have known differently. However, when he appealed this firing, he was placed back into his previous position. In September of 2023, the DPS announced that their internal investigation had finished. No more Texas Rangers would now be punished. Some laws were changed as a result of this case. As a result of both this crime and Peyton Gendron's massacre in Buffalo, New York, the state of New York passed a new law that would raise the age requirement to buy a semi-automatic weapon from 18 to 21. Texas also passed a law requiring law enforcement to partake in 16 hours of courses related to school shooting responses every 2 years. For the time being, it seemed that it was all over. The UCISD board announced plans to build a new elementary school to replace Robb Elementary. They began construction in 2023. It would be placed near the Dalton Elementary School in order to form a new campus that would host classes from preschool to 4th grade. However, not all was over. While no more Texas Rangers would be punished by the DPS, the same didn't apply to other officers on scene at the time. Many noticed that something seemed to be brewing behind the scenes when Pete Arredondo lost his honorary discharge status at the end of 2023. The Uvalde County District Attorney, Christina Mitchell, convened a grand jury to find out whether or not any of their own officers should be criminally charged for their lack of response on the day of the shooting.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49.
Shut up!
Shortly after, in January 2024, the grand jury began hearing testimonies. Steve McCraw, the DPS director, was happy to testify before them. Many other officers came to speak their piece as well. The Department of Justice had also finished detailing their own findings when investigating.
He's still looking good.
They criticized a large number of failures on the part of the Uvalde police. They noted the failure to recognize the case as an active shooting, the failure to secure the crime scene, the failure to follow standard operating procedures, and the failure to communicate appropriately with the families. They even attacked the personal character of the police, saying that they lack courage. Not only that, but the DOJ had confirmed that the victims' families were indeed harassed by the police after the incident somewhat regularly in the hopes that they would leave town. This whole report was of major use to the grand jury. On June 27, 2024, the grand jury indicted the first Uvalde police officer, that being none other than Pete Arredondo. They then indicted another, Adrian Gonzalez. They were hit with multiple felony charges of child endangerment. Arredondo was hit with 10, while Gonzalez was hit with 29 charges.
Damn, wait,
it's unclear why the difference in their counts is so high, but it was mentioned that Gonzalez was a senior officer who had taken school shooting-related training in the past, so he may have been seen as having more responsibility to act accordingly.
But
Pete Arredondo was arrested and booked into the Uvalde jail that day, the same jail that he used to place criminals into himself. However, he was able to pay $100,000 in bonds and walk free for the time being. Adrian Gonzalez turned himself in a day later. He himself was released after he posted a $10,000 bail. Both officers are looking at least 2 years in prison and $10,000 in fines if they are convicted. Many feel that they deserve much more. On July 18th, 2024, it was time for Arredondo to make his plea. He predictably pled not guilty to all 10 of the charges against him. Similarly, Gonzalez pled not guilty to all 29 of his own charges as well. With that, they will both face trial. As of now, their trial dates have been pushed back a few times. Only time will tell what kind of sentence they might serve. In autumn of 2025, the replacement for the Robb Elementary School, called Legacy Elementary School, opened for new students, about 2 miles away from where Robb was located. The ribbon-cutting ceremony that opened the school was very emotional. Even though it was a new school, it was impossible to ignore the fact that it was replacing a school that was part of one of the biggest tragedies in American history. This was something that the staff didn't ignore. The UCISD president, Laura Perez, said, "This school is not about forgetting. It's about remembering with dignity, rebuilding with courage, and choosing to believe in the future even when the past still hurts." The new school includes a tribute to the 21 who died that day, along with a memorial tree to honor them. The Robb Elementary School, as of the making of this video, still hasn't been torn down. It remains in town, mostly dark with only a few outside lights to prevent intruders. It continues as a grim reminder of what happened that day, standing in the shadows. Salvador's grandma Sally was eventually released from the hospital, finally recovering from the gunshot wound to her face. However, the bullet destroyed her teeth and a good portion of her jaw. She will likely never be able to speak again. She needed multiple surgeries even after her discharge from the hospital. A GoFundMe page was created to pay for some of those medical bills. It asked for $100,000, but it fell flat at around $47,000. Still a surprising amount for the relative of a mass killer.
Yeah.
Salvador's sister has joined the military, and by most accounts never speaks of her brother. Salvador's mom believes that he is now in heaven, feeling that God has forgiven him.
Not at all, boy!
Boy, it's out the mud. We got Rashad McCown.
It's out the mud. Rashad McCants, we done. And yo, I don't know what the fuck that dumbass bitch talking about. Yo, baby, not in heaven. I swear to God, that nigga nibbling on the balls and saying, "Give me more." Nigga just coming all on his face. That's what he deserved. He don't deserve peace, bro. Killing 22 kids, 21 kids, 21 people in general is fucking nuts. Killing 19 kids is insane. Traumatizing over hundreds of people. You don't deserve to live. You definitely don't deserve to go to heaven. Are you fucking... Rest in peace to all y'all family members if y'all was killed in a shooting, school shooting of any kind. I love y'all. Love y'all self. Be there for y'all family. See y'all with me.
Need you to come my way. I'm going out my mind. Dirty MG, they blue. How many at one time? What you said gotta be true. You was all on my mind. Wherever I go, they go. Too many at one time.